Welcome to the Pivot Experience podcast, where leadership transformation isn't just a concept, it's a journey we take together. This is where real leaders share real stories about the moments that changed everything. In each episode, we dive deep into the pivotal experiences that transformed good leaders into great ones. Whether you're a seasoned executive, a rising star in your organization, or someone ready to take that next big step in your leadership journey, you're in the right place. Get ready to learn, grow, and maybe even find that spark that ignites your own leadership pivot. This is the Pivot Experience podcast, where your next breakthrough starts here.
Hey guys, what's up? It's your friend, Pastor John R. Adolph from the Antioch Church in Beaumont, Texas. Hey, listen, do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe this channel so you can continue to pivot into your next.
What's up and what's happening, TPE family? We're back with another very special episode of the Pivot Experience podcast, where our aim and goal is to help leaders pivot into their next. You guys know we like to bring on guests that have experience in leadership, have experience in entrepreneurship, and we have someone very, very, very special. Actually, one of the first times I've seen or was exposed to this young lady, we have a program called Right Now Media, and she has a course on Right Now Media, and I was like, wow, someone from Chick-fil-A has their own course on Right Now Media. One of our executives has their thumbprint on creating content outside of the Chick-fil-A world. And to be honest with you, it was hers, and I think Dee Ann Turner had one on there as well. It's one of the inspirations for me to reach out and start doing my own level of content and the things that I want to do and show what you guys hear on this podcast and the other things that I do. I have a young lady by the name of Dee Ann Turner on the line with us today. She is a former Chick-fil-A executive, and now she has her own business. And so I'm not going to steal too much of her own thunder. I want to give her the roadway to introduce herself.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. What a pleasure it is to be with you. And so, yes, I spent 33 years working at Chick-fil-A. I started 1985. I was started in an administrative position and found my calling was helping other people find their calling. I had a marketing background. I ended up in human resources and enjoyed a career that was full of lots of exciting experiences. But probably my favorite role that I had in all those years was when I got to select Chick-fil-A franchisees. I really enjoyed putting that puzzle together and helping people who had a dream, fulfill that dream. Truett Cathy, of course, provided the opportunity. I like to say I was his facilitator, and that was one of my favorite roles as I led human resources, later to be called talent there at Chick-fil-A. And since then, I've written two other books. I wrote It's My Pleasure while I was at Chick-fil-A, and then I wrote Bet on Talent and Crush Your Career since then. And I enjoy traveling around the country, speaking to audiences well, I said the country, actually around the world, speaking to audiences, but my very favorite is when I have the opportunity to talk to Chick-fil-A team members and their operators.
No, again, thank you so much for taking out the time. Just 33 years. I think my tenure at Chick-fil-A, I've been there for 23, and I think I've spent a lot of time there. But you have almost been there longer than I've been alive. We're close to that. And I guess just as you think back, you've held so many different roles at the organization. What are some of those key decisions, or some of those breakthrough moments that you've had the chance to see in the organization that really created the values and created what Chick-fil-A really is?
Well, I look back, I came to the organization right as the support center was opening at Buffington Road, if you can imagine. It had just been open a couple of years, and it was right after the Chick-fil-A corporate purpose was actually defined and written. Uh, Truett opened his first Chick-fil-A restaurant in 1967. Of course, he had opened other restaurants prior to that, but the company was incorporated in 64, and then the first restaurant in 67. And then it was 1982 before Chick-fil-A actually defined its purpose. And we know that purpose is to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to us and positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And so really being, while I wasn't there when that exactly happened, it was really being incorporated into the culture of who Chick-fil-A was as I came on board there. So I really think that's a pivot in the history. Another kind of fun thing I remember was the next year we were building the first Chick-fil-A freestanding restaurant, and it was costing a fortune. And so everybody's walking around wringing their hands. What if it doesn't work? And Chick-fil-A didn't have the kind of, I mean, when I went there in 85, we had about 150 restaurants doing 175 million in sales. Okay. Think about that compared to today. And so we were wringing our hands. What if it doesn't work? We bet the farm, as they like to say, right, on this. And so, of course, boy, the decisions that were made to go out of malls into freestanders actually saved the company, because if they'd stayed in malls, they would have been obsolete. So that was another key one. I think about different product changes over time and expanding the menu, especially when we added some healthier choices like grilled chicken and the salads to the menu. I think about some of those times. Watching the Cathy family literally grow up, Dan becoming president and then Andrew becoming president, and over those years, and just watching how that expanded and how that changed things. For me personally, um, the most important decisions were always the people we selected to operate the restaurants. That was the number one most important decision that I was part of at Chick-fil-A. And then secondly, the people who would support those operators there, the support staff. They were both my favorite decisions and what I feel like was the contribution that I could make with my talents to the organization.
Excellent. And a lot of people who listen to this show are people who are pursuing the opportunity to become an operator. In fact, there's a lot of LDP people, a lot of people who are applying externally. And then this question might catch you off guard a little bit, but I'm sure it won't. What are maybe one or two things that you were looking for in those potential candidates that really jumped off the page, that kind of cemented? Now, I don't know if you can answer this question from all the legalities and stuff like that, but what are some of those characteristics you were looking for in operators when you were selecting them?
Sure, so I think we've set this up exactly right, because I always tell people the players and the processes have changed since I was there. So I can't tell you exactly what people are looking for today, but I can tell you what I was looking for. And there's probably some consistency over time in that. But number one, we're looking for people to serve. Now, that sounds pretty obvious, and you've been part of Chick-fil-A for 23 years, so you know what that looks like at so many different levels, not just at the restaurant level. You've seen this in action. You may have heard somewhere along the way that Chick-fil-A's former president, Jimmy Collins, he was the first non-family president, and Jimmy was actually my mentor, Alex, and he taught me a lot of things. And one thing he used to like to say a lot is, at Chick-fil-A, if you're not serving chicken, you better be serving someone who is. And so, of course, team members, they are serving the customers right there at the counter. And their operators are serving their team members and their customers. And those at the support staff, they're there serving the support staff. And so, excuse me, the operators messed that up. Sometimes it might feel that way. Oops, that was, but no, they're serving the operators. And so that's just really important, that people come in with a service mindset and a track record of serving others. Be ready to tell stories and talk about ways that you've incorporated service into who you are as a person. So that's really important when I was selecting talent. The other thing I was looking for is a leadership track record, how you took on leadership. I have three young adult sons, and one of them, I was talking to the other day just about, because right now he's in an individual contributor role, he wasn't thinking about the ways he leads in his job. And so he was telling me about how he saw the need for a training program for the summer interns. And he works for a fairly large company. And so he actually, for his division, he went and created the training program and began training interns himself, because he felt like that his own internship experience had been lacking a little bit. Well, that's leadership. And then as people junior to him came into his organization in his part of the company, um, he would go alongside them and help train them and bring them along without actually being assigned that role. So that's leadership. So those are the kinds of people, if you want to, when I was selecting operators, I was looking for people who could um, demonstrate track record of leadership, which usually starts pretty young in life. And I don't think any experience is um, not important. I think every experience you have as leadership experience, whatever it is, if it was captain of a team in high school or the drum major in the band, or those are early leadership experiences that I think are important. Those are the top two. There's some other things I'm looking for when I was selecting. I would look for people who embodied the values of Chick-fil-A. And so at the support center, the values are we're here to serve, we're better together, which is a nod to teamwork, we are purpose driven, and we pursue what's next. So I was looking for people that didn't mean their own personal values had to be that word for word, but that they resonated with that. And when I interviewed people, I used a technique called behavioral interviewing. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but what that means is I was looking for somebody's stories and examples of their past performance. I wanted to know what they actually did in the past. I wouldn't ask them situational questions like, what would you do if a customer yelled at you across the counter? Well, maybe they've never been in that situation, so they couldn't tell me with accuracy what they would do in that situation. But I could say, has anybody ever been really mad at you? Can you tell me a story about what happened and how you responded? See, that tells me what they did in the past, and that gives me good information. So if I were preparing for any interview with any organization today, this is a technique that's pretty common. So I would be prepared to not only talk about what my responsibilities and results have been in my current and past roles, I would be prepared to give examples and tell stories about those qualities as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a gap in applicant pools in terms of, I mean, even myself recalling those different stories and being able to pair what skills were derived from that experience. And so that's very, very good stuff. Thank you so much, Dee Ann. Now, I don't know how much we want to go into this topic, but you were the first female officer at Chick-fil-A. Is that accurate? And so what
That's
perspectives
correct.
do you feel like you brought as the first female officer? Like what kind of viewpoint did you bring to the table as it related to helping shape what the brand is today?
I think I think maybe most importantly is just, when you're the first of anything, you have some responsibility to bring others along with you. And so I always felt like I was an educator, just trying to help because understanding some of the differences and perspectives that a woman might have. At the time, I don't know what the uh, profile of the average customer at Chick-fil-A is today, but back in those days, it was actually the mom who came in with the kids after baseball or soccer practice and, or gathered with her friends and they played in the kids played in the playgrounds and stuff like that. That was what it was like. And that was, I mean, a higher percentage of our customers were represented by that demographic. So we needed that voice around the table as we made decisions, whether it was about the service or the environment or the products how we were going to operate Chick-fil-A, we really needed that perspective. So whether it was me or the women who followed after me, I think that was an important season because we had a voice there to be considered. We could represent those customers, and I think that was really helpful. I think as Chick-fil-A's diversified all across the board, the same has been true. They're more representative of all kinds of customers who have different perspectives and are going to see products differently and service differently and the environment differently. And they've been able to call on that diversity that they now have in the organization.
Yeah, I can definitely agree and attest to that. Over the 20 years that I've worked there, just seeing the how the demographics at the support center have changed, and they're more reflective of, I guess, the diverse customer base. So you're absolutely right, and I think our primary customer is still the same. That you spoke about earlier in terms of the mom
Yeah.
who is going to and I use, personally speaking, when we localize the conversation a little bit, I use my wife as a idea model of what a customer is. Like, okay, mom has a couple of kids trying to get from point A to point B after school. What do we have at our disposal to be able to appeal to them the most? And so you're absolutely right. Having that representation, or at least being able to try to channel some of that representation, is very important. So you boasted a very high retention rate. Either I want to say at the corporate level, or in your own organization, of 95%. What is your secret behind finding extraordinary talent?
Well, Chick-fil-A, and I don't know what it is today, but I've heard that it's very similar, that they continue to retain franchisees or operators and staff members at the same close to 95%. But that was what it was for about 30 years while I was there. And I credit that to Truett's focus on selection. A lot of organizations spend a lot of money on the back end. Hey, if this doesn't work out, we have these exit plans. We have, severance agreements. We have outplacement services, all this. Truett was just the opposite. When I went there, I didn't have hardly any budget at all for people leaving the organization. But I had a budget, a healthy budget for selecting, because he wanted us to make the right decision in the first place. And by the way, not just that we select the right talent, but that the talent selects us too, because it's a two-way decision. And so, over the time, I'm sure you've heard, and it still happens. I know that it still takes a long time to get in the organization for some people. And some of that's just the right opportunity being available. But even the interviewing process itself is a little longer than most organizations. And it's not just because the people at Chick-fil-A can't make up their mind who they want to select. It's because they want the people who are going through the process to be absolutely sure that that's what they want to do, because they don't want to make changes. When you make changes, it's it's costly. You know that from bringing in the restaurant. I mean, it's costly when you lose a team member. It costs to the turnover costs, the training, the lost productivity because you have less team members available. Well, so it's costly to do that, but it's also very disruptive. It's disruptive to the organization. It's disruptive to the team that they were part of. It's disruptive to that individual's life, that, especially if you think about a franchisee that might have moved into the community to take that role, and their family is disrupted. And then the team members in the restaurant and the customers in that community, they're all disrupted. So it's just better if we invest on the front end to make good selections versus having to clean up a mistake and do something on the back end. And that came straight from Truett. So that's why we were always so careful to make sure that we did what we needed to do to make a good decision, but that we also offered the opportunity for the person making the decision to make a great decision too.
Awesome. No, and I love that, a lot of people think that it's just Chick-fil-A dragging their feet, right? Not necessarily dragging their feet, but just taking their time, and I think some people get frustrated in that process, but it's good to know that, hey, we're just wanting to make sure this is really what you want to do, and you're right, they talk about the operator process might be 18 to 24 months from application to potential being able to get into a restaurant, and it's a two-way decision. I never really heard anybody say that it's a two-way decision. I guess it's automatically assumed that if I put my application in, this is what I want. But you guys really want to test that and put that to the fire to see, is this really what you want? So I know I love that. In your book, Bet on Talent, you talk about finding extraordinary talent, which you've already highlighted some things here. But what are some of those non-negotiable qualities you look into for potential leaders, as discussed in your book?
Yeah, so some of them, we've talked about this whole heart for service thing is a
Sure.
non-negotiable. And again, did we always do it perfect? No. Somewhere along the line, you might have run into somebody and go, wait a minute, how did that happen? They don't seem to have a heart for serving me and looking after me. And but that usually is I mean, that is really the focus and what's trying to happen when we're looking for those qualities. Some people wonder, why do you look at people's finances when we talk about non-negotiables? And again, this is going back to how I did things, not necessarily, I don't know how they do it today, but if this is a question, it's because, if you can't manage your own finances, then how are you expected to manage the finances of a multi-million dollar restaurant for Chick-fil-A, right? So it's really important as you go into the interview process, and I'm sure those who are in it have been told this, but it bears repeating. Make sure your finances are in order. Have as little debt as possible, be sure you pay your bills on time, that you've put some savings away, and that you have a good credit rating. Those are things you're looking for before you even get in the process, because they can be early disqualifiers if you have some real problems in those areas. Um, so the leadership track record, the heart for service, making sure your finances are in order. And then there's some things that were personal to me. I wanted to be sure that, when I selected an operator, that person, I mean, I felt so much responsibility like that. I was putting my name on that person. And so some of the questions I might would ask in an interview, one of them that I would ask is, why would I want my children to work for you? At the time I was doing this, I had three young sons. Because if I didn't want my children, if I wouldn't want my children to work for this person, why would anybody else want their children set to work for them? So that was a question that I like to ask a lot. I would ask a question like this. Is there anything you haven't shared that if it were to become known would be an embarrassment to me or you or Chick-fil-A? And most people think, oh, nobody would say something at that point, but it really made them stop and think the seriousness because they were going out into a community. They were being entrusted at the time primarily with a team full of young people, and so I wanted to be sure that they weren't going to embarrass us, if they were going to do a great job at that. So some of those really deep things that most organizations might not pay attention to were really top of mind for me. And I think today it's more likely, but I'm not sure that people have the same um, focus or even to tell you the truth, the courage to ask the tough questions.
No, no, that's really, really good. Hopefully, you guys have been taking notes since Miss Deanne has been talking. She is giving out, even though, as a disclaimer, this may not be how it goes now. But if there is some level of consistencies there, I think it can't hurt for you to be able to answer these questions that she's outlining because she's giving, at the end of the day, it still helps you become more in tune with who you are and your leadership journey to be able to communicate yourself in a better way. So, love that. I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. Looking back at your transition from corporate leadership to running your own business, what are some of those pivotal moments that led to that decision?
Well, it's a long story, and more time that we have. Um, but I had been asked in 2015 to move over. Andrew Cathy, Dan's son, had become the chief people officer, and I had been asked to move over for my role and launch and start Chick-fil-A sustainability function, which was very important and it's something that Chick-fil-A needed to focus on. But I just had a passion around helping organizations, culture, and talent. I'd written my first book, It's My Pleasure. And in 2018, the spring that year, Chick-fil-A offered an early retirement for about 100 staff members based on their years of service. And so I, and age, and I had a contract to write two more books sitting on my desk. And I realized after writing the first book that there was no way I could be an officer in the company and also go out and write the books. But more importantly, I couldn't promote them. It just takes an enormous amount of time to do that. And I felt like the work that I was doing was not my personal highest calling, that there were probably people that were better at that than me, and that what I was best at, I was no longer doing. And so um, it was felt like at the time the biggest risk and leap I've ever made in my life, leap of faith. Um, and I really did feel like that old saying of, it was the Peter Pan and Tinkerbell where they talk. Oh no, it wasn't Peter Pan. It was Peter Pan and Wendy, and where he says, what if I fall? And she says, oh my darling, what if you fly? And that's the precipice that I felt like I was on because I went to Chick-fil-A when I was 21 years old. And at the time this happened, I had just turned 54. So now you know how old I am. But my whole adult life had been spent at Chick-fil-A. It was my family. I couldn't imagine doing anything differently. And now I look back on that and I just thank God for the opportunity because that season of my life, I couldn't do what I'm doing now had it not been for Chick-fil-A. But the best decision I ever made, career decision I ever made, was going to Chick-fil-A. And the second best decision I made was knowing when to fly. And so what I've enjoyed is taking what I learned there and helping other leaders become successful in their organizations and build remarkable cultures and select and grow extraordinary talent and win the hearts of their customers.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. What do you believe is going to be the biggest talent challenge over the next 10 years? I mean, I think the landscape, COVID has changed things for us a little bit. The type of employee or team member that we're getting into our organization is changing. Customer spending habits are changing. So, as you are a guru, obviously, if you guys don't haven't figured it out yet on talent, what do you perceive as going to be some of the issues or hurdles that we're going to face over the next 10 or so years?
In the marketplace and business in general, and I can't expound a lot on this, but I definitely think that's probably the biggest issue in every way that it impacts us if you think about it, from from what AI will replace to how AI might be abused and how that it impacts businesses, to the employment experience. All of those things I think is the biggest issue in the next 10 years. And so if I'm somebody who's in the midst of my career, or even starting my career, that's something that I'm going to be sure that I follow and I'm up to speed on, and that, I recognize that. You might be familiar with the term S curves. I almost mentioned it earlier. And S curves are for those who aren't familiar, it's a business term. And what it means is, you hit that point. And Chick-fil-A had an S curve when they went from the malls to freestanders. That was an S curve for them. It's like we're headed this way, but the environment's changing, and we have to pivot, to use the name of your podcast. And so AI is an S curve, and it's a big one, that's going to change the landscape of the marketplace and business. So I think that's number one. Um, I actually think, for a while there, it was going to be, again, in the marketplace, business place, it was going to be what remote working was doing to us. We'll see how that plays out, because not only are businesses calling their workers back in, but especially among Gen Z, when I talk to them, and I don't know if you know this part, but I'm a talent expert in residence at High Point University. So I spend a lot of time with young people, and they want to be they want to be in person. A little remote to give them a little flexibility is good, but this total remote, they're lonely. It's affecting their mental health. They feel like it impacts their growth in their career. And I have to believe that's true too. If you don't have that FaceTime and you only have this virtual experience. So I think there's still some of that, but I think that pales in comparison to the impact that AI is going to have.
No, definitely. I would have to agree to both of those for sure. I know AI if it isn't replacing, it's definitely accelerating some things, accelerating work getting done. So I 100% agree there. And that hybrid of work at home and on site, we do see iterations of that. Not necessarily at the restaurant level, but in other entities, you
Sure.
definitely see that happening. And I like that term S curve, because I think we're I guess encountering another one from with what the on-demand economy is doing, the on-demand sales channels are doing to our business, and we're starting to see a big shift in how customer preferences are happening in that area. So we have a new phrase to use in terms of referencing that. I love that. Thank you so much. And so, final question. First, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate your time. A lot of great information here. But for the listeners of this podcast, what is one actionable thing they can do tomorrow to be a better steward of talent in their organization?
I think so. I wrote a post this week. Is today just Tuesday?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think I wrote it yesterday. I think I wrote it yesterday. And so it's top of mind for me. It's about performance feedback. And even though I've been doing a lot of things for a long time, I'm constantly learning how to do them better. In fact, sometimes I go, gosh, I wish I did this better when I was at Chick-fil-A. I wish I'd known what I know now when I was there. But this idea of being able to give feedback well, I think is really important. And so let me give you an idea around this. And if you want to go back and look at me on LinkedIn, Dee Ann Turner, obviously, or on Facebook, author. Dee Ann Turner, you'll find me there, or Instagram at Dee Ann Turner. You will find this post there. So you don't even have to take notes, just go look it up, okay? And by the way, while you're there, follow me and connect with me on LinkedIn. But seriously, the notes are there. But the whole idea is when you talk about having to give performance feedback to somebody, your palms start sweating. You don't like to do it. Most people don't like to do it. But it's really a series of asking good questions and helping the person discover their own performance. So, you start with the expectations. Hey, what was expected here? Talk about whatever that goal was. Your second question is, okay, tell me what went well. And so they're going to tell you if they miss anything, you can add to it, but let them tell you first. Well, what do you think didn't go so well? Chances are, if it didn't go well, they know. Oh, by the way, when you ask them what went well, your next question is why. Because if they don't know why it went well, they can't repeat that good performance. So explore why it went well. What didn't go well? Listen to them. If they missed something, you can point it out. But the good news is they probably won't miss it, so you don't have to actually be the one to tell them. They can discover it. And when they tell you what didn't go well, ask them why it didn't go well, because they can improve it if they don't understand why. So help them discover that. And then the next question is, what will you do differently next time? What are you going to do differently in this next quarter, this next 30 days, or whatever the time period is? And so they're going to tell you what that they think they could do differently. And then, that's your chance to say, well, I might add one or two things. By the way, don't add more than one or two. They can't handle more than one or two at one time. Don't give them 6 or 12 things. Give them one or two things. You know what? In 3 months, you can talk about the other 2 or 3 things you want to talk about. And then lastly, really important question. End every conversation, not just your feedback conversations, but start saying this all the time. What can I do to help? You ever heard that from anybody at Chick-fil-A? I bet you have. What can I do to help? And so if you will take, I just gave a crash course in giving performance feedback, and everybody who'll take that in and use that starting today, your palms will be a whole lot less sweaty, I promise, and you'll get better results.
No, thank you so much for that framework. We all go about it a little differently. And to your point, there's a certain level of nervousness when you don't have something proven to use to give feedback, because feedback is critical. And so I definitely appreciate you giving us that free offer, that free crash course to our listeners. And I was going to give you the roadway to do this, but you've already done it. But I want to do it again. How do we connect with you? How do we get in touch with you?
Sure. So I have a website, deeannturner.com, Deeann Turner.com. And then again, connect with me at LinkedIn. I am got lots of Chick-fil-A connections, and I enjoy following you all and seeing what you're up to. Um, Dee Ann Turner, author, on Facebook, which I know a lot of your folks aren't on Facebook. At Dee Ann Turner on Instagram. And then occasionally I'll pop up on X, but it's not the platform I spend much time on. So I have at Dee Ann Turner there as well. Now, let me tell your audience one other thing. I'll tell you a secret. Two of the books I wrote, first of all, It's My Pleasure is out of print. And if you find one, don't buy it. Can you believe I said that? Yeah, because it's too expensive. Because Bet on Talent was purchased, the rights to It's My Pleasure was purchased by Baker Publishing. And they came to me and they said, would you rewrite this, expand it, and we're going to put a new title on it. So all the content from It's My Pleasure is in Bet on Talent, plus more, okay? I wrote that book. My audience for that book were Chick-fil-A franchisees, okay? Number one were the Chick-fil-A franchisees. So knowing that that's my audience, I think that's helpful to you all. Second thing, my third book, Crush Your Career, that's the book I wrote for Chick-fil-A team members. That was my audience in mind. Now, people all over the place read those books, but if you ask Dee Ann who was in her heart when she wrote those books, those were the audiences. So if you're trying to figure some of these things out about Chick-fil-A, I hope you'll find some help in those and lots of resources. I did a podcast release with Crush Your Career that's on my website. It's just 8 episodes, but I think there's some stuff in there you'll find really helpful too. So anyway, I would love to hear from you all. Thank you so much for having me. It's just an honor to know who's in the audience and that I could do anything in the world to help you all. I'm so grateful for you all and for serving guests at Chick-fil-A and wanting to pursue a career with them. I have this great opportunity because of the work that you do in it. And so thank you very much. And it's been my pleasure to be with you.
Awesome. Y'all heard Dee Ann. Y'all go purchase the new updated version of It's My Pleasure. Is now is Bet on Talent and Crush Your Career. Let's go support Dee Ann and get both of those books. And if you don't do that, at a minimum, go connect with her on LinkedIn. Go follow her on Instagram. Go find her on Facebook. Go dig up her ex, because she says she doesn't. Well, I didn't mean to say it like that, but go find her on X. She's not that active on X, but go find her there. But thank you so much, Dee Ann. And until next time, TPE family, peace.
Hey guys, what's up? It's your friend, Pastor John R. Adolph from the Antioch Church in Beaumont, Texas. And I just want to slip this in right quick so you'll never forget. It's all about progress over perfection here at TPE.
Tap into the Pivot Experience, where we help young, hungry entrepreneurs move on to the next step.